Welcome! My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. We are continuing our second anniversary celebration this week and all month long with double the episodes, exciting gifts for patrons at patreon.com/fanimated, and a giveaway on our Instagram at fanimatedpodcast. So in my continuing pursuit to find animation fans who are doing cool things, today I am thrilled to introduce author, cosplayer, and freelance writer Brianna Lawrence to the show. Brianna is currently promoting her Magical Girl book series Magnifique Noir, which you can check out at magnifiquenoir.com. I had a blast discussing her creative process, delving into her biggest inspirations, and just geeking out about My Hero Academia with her. So without further ado, let's get started and let's get animated. Hello, Fanimators. Thank you so much for listening today. I have a fantastic guest. I can't wait to get started diving into this interview. Today we have Brianna Lawrence, the author, the cosplayer, the geek extraordinaire. And Brianna, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing so well. It's the weekend right now, and I always enjoy having some time off to just, enjoy the nice weather and enjoy it while we can before fall comes.
Yeah, that's true. Like, it's been really hot and now it's cooling down, and I know it's going to reach a point that it's going to get too cold, so we're kind of in the sweet spot.
Yes.
So I'll enjoy it for like a week and then it'll be back to terrible. So.
Exactly. As long as, it's not snowing, then it's good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't even say the S word yet, it's like.
My wife and I were talking about like, oh my God, winter quarantine. Like, we're already stuck in the house for winter anyway because Minnesota. But now it's like an extra layer of you've been in the house this whole time. Now there's winter.
Exactly. Oh, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough.
Maybe 2020 will cut us a break at the end of the year and it'll be like light.
Oh, that would be perfect. Yes. I hope so. I truly hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. Here's to hoping. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I just really love to highlight cool people in fandoms who are doing cool things. And it was so fun to hear you at Convergence Online this year, and you just had so much energy and passion about your passions and your excitement for animation and just for all sorts of fun things. So briefly, can you introduce my listeners to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Brianna Lawrence, or Bree Chibi Cosplays when I'm cosplaying. Haven't been doing much cosplay this year because there's no cons. So,
yeah.
I'm an author, freelance writer. I just actually announced that I got an agent at New Leaf Agency.
That's awesome.
And so we're working on some exciting like pitches and stuff to try and turn into like graphic novels. So
yes.
That just got announced like on Monday. Like the first of the month was me announcing that I had an agent, and I was like, "Yay! This is good for the rest of the year. Let's stay in like this path, like in this zone. That would be great."
Yes. So ride that momentum.
I'm currently a freelance writer at Funimation, so I get to write cool articles about anime and stuff every now and then.
Yes.
And the main series I'm promoting is my Magical Girl series, Magnifique Noir, which focuses on a group of Black queer magical girls, because I've been in love with the magical girl genre since Sailor Moon in the 90s. So
yes,
it's kind of my take on that genre. So that's basically a good summary of me and what I do.
Yes, thank you. So many things, so many wonderful things that you do. I feel like wow, I would be so overwhelmed with like having your hand in all these different things, but you're able to like do it all, girl. It's great.
Trying, trying my best.
Well, I'm really excited that you have an agent. Congrats. That's super cool.
Thank you.
An
I'm,
absolutely great
I'm
step.
still getting used to it because I'm used to doing it all like by myself.
Hmm.
So I submitted a pitch and I was like, what do I do now? And she's like, well, now it's my turn. Like, oh, okay.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. Yeah.
I felt
So
like actually take a break.
it's like you can like just focus on, your creative process.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Oh, I'm so excited.
What is your creative process like when you're writing?
A disaster. Okay, it's not that disastrous. So
Uh-huh.
I with everything that's been going on with like the quarantine and stuff,
Hmm.
my wife and I basically made specific spots in our house that was like no work whatsoever. So I
Hmm.
actually have my office, which is where work and writing and everything happens. And then we have like the break spaces where like all the video games and stuff are. So generally I wake up and I mean honestly I play Animal Crossing for like an hour.
Who doesn't?
And then after I'm like more awake, I like try to write a little bit, and whether it's like writing part of like a book or outlining an article,
Hmm.
like all of it is in the realm of writing to me. So it's not like I have to write 5,000 words or else it's like, oh, I got this outline drafted. I got this like pitch organized. That still counts. Or like I like edited this or that or whatever. And I'm trying to get better at like taking breaks and having like scheduled times for work. So, because when I first started doing this full time, I would be like, well, I could just stay up all night because I don't have a boss and I could just do whatever I want. And then I would just destroy myself because I'd be up all night. And so now it's like, okay, we have actual designated times. And I think like 5 o'clock is like the, okay, no more working, no more doing this. Now it's time to like eat dinner and relax. No more like looking at your outline, no more doing this, that or the other and stuff like that. And I'm trying my best to keep up with that, and I tell everybody to do it, and then I blink and it's like 1 a.m. and I'm like, "Oh, oops."
Right. It's always so hard to, keep your own advice and
Yes,
make those boundaries, especially
I'm
when
bad at it.
your schedule can be so free and it's just, I know I will just be working, 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 and then it's 9 p.m. and I'm like, oh man, I just like got into this. I need to like take a break, man.
Mhm. I also have like Google Docs on my phone so
Mhm.
I can, because ideas come at the most random time. They're never scheduled. It's like, oh, I just got out the shower and I came up with an idea. So instead of having to run to the computer, I have my phone.
Well, that's great. Yeah. I mean, really, ideas can come at any moment. So you're prepared.
Mhm. We also, well, back when we did conventions and they required road trips, I was the one taking notes in the car because my wife's the one who drives. So we talk out every idea we get. We talk it out first before we even start writing it to
Yeah.
like bounce ideas off each other. And it's good to have someone to like bounce ideas back and forth with. And one of the things we do, which I always forget to talk about, but I think is kind of cool, is before we have like character names and stuff, we actually use like pop culture characters.
Oh, fun.
So, so we'll be like, so imagine like Deku from My Hero Academia,
Mhm.
and instead of trying to explain like who the character is and like what their archetype is, we instantly know what type of character it is. So we're like, oh,
Yeah.
so determined and fun and stuff like that. And then we're like, okay, now imagine Bakugo, and we're like, okay, so kind of short tempered
Yes.
and like sort of a perfectionist and thinks
Mhm.
he's the best thing ever. And it's like,
Right.
cool. So we have the archetypes laid out. So now we could talk about the plot and stuff. And then as we're talking, later we'll come up with like, all right, here's the actual character, here's who they actually are. So that's part of our process as well.
That is so fun. It's like you can focus and channel on like a specific stock character type and then kind of
Yes,
finesse the details,
exactly.
as you
Because we
go.
used to role play a lot. That's how we used to talk when we were long distance.
Yeah.
So we just kind of expanded on it to make our own stories. So it just kind of came natural to have an outline that said like Naruto and Sasuke instead,
Right.
instead of like actual character names.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. And then and how when it comes time to like make the switch into like diving deeper into a character, then like when do you decide or how do you decide their name? Like I feel like that would be a really hard thing to do.
Naming is the hardest part. I feel like I'm so bad at coming up with names, and it's you know how people are like, haha, I have a baby book full of names. It's like, yeah, that's actually true. Like
That's awesome.
I have like a website, like various websites, and sometimes it'll come to me, or and I think my wife's better at coming up with names than me, but but usually it's like, oh my god, what is your name? Like when I was
Mhm.
coming up with the magical girls, coming up with their superhero names was easier than their real names.
Right.
Like, hey, it's like Galactic Purple, awesome. What's your real name? Uh,
Hmm.
so lots of website searching, and I
Yeah.
know there's always posters like, don't look at my search history, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, don't look at my search history. Because it's like
Yeah.
baby names and like what sounds like a good name for this character, and eventually I get
Hmm.
somewhere. And usually I don't do that until I start actually writing the book.
Yeah.
Like during the outlining, it's kind of like, you know, stock character. And then
Hmm.
when it's time to actually write, it's like, okay, you need to actually flesh this character out. What's their name? And even things like what do they like? What do they not like? Like stuff that might not make it into the book, but it at least helps me shape who they are. So each character has like, likes and dislikes. Like I think I have a note that like Radical Rainbow is the one who hides behind a pillow during horror movies. And it's like there's not a single scene where they watch a horror movie, but
Right. But if they were to, that's
if
what
they
she'd be.
were, she's me. And like I'm watching Lovecraft Country right now, and I actually
Yes.
like have moments where I turn my head away from the TV.
Right, right, yeah.
Like this is the scare. I don't want to see it. I'm like that's Radical Rainbow. She's like the tough girl who's like, I don't want to watch horror. Please leave the lights on.
Mhm.
Please, if you know ahead of time what happens, tell me. So I'm prepared.
Right, like not like embracing the spoiler so that it's less of a crazy, shock.
I do that with my. I'm like, if my wife has watched, like she was watching Hannibal before me, so
Yes.
I was like, please tell me the really grotesque parts. Like
Hmm.
I can do gore to a certain extent, but I'm like, if it's really bad, like the episode will start and she'll read the description and she's like, okay, this is the part where this happens. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
cool. Thank you.
Yes.
We
Prepared
can
now.
proceed now. I'm prepared. And we got to the last season and she hadn't finished it. So we watched it together and I was very angry
Oh no.
because I didn't know what was coming.
Right. Oh gosh. Oh, that's great. That's great. So, how much planning do you do before you actually start, writing the book?
I outlined the entire story.
Okay.
Like I outline everything and I try to do like chapter by chapter, and sometimes it's not what ends up happening, but it at least guides me. So when I was writing the book, I have the whole series outlined by like number of books, number of chapters, what I want to happen in each chapter to like each character. So I try and outline everything, and that's usually what like as I'm writing, it might change along the way. Like usually it changes while I'm writing, but there's at least a here's the end goal to everything. As long as you get to this point, you're still you're still fine. Like this is like with the first book, it was like this is the book where everybody gets their powers. So as long as you keep that going, you're good. But every chapter was outlined, and then when I wrote it and like did like the second read through, I ended up changing things or
Mm-hmm.
adding things that came to me as I was writing.
Yeah.
But there's a giant Google Doc that's like book one, book two, book three, book four. Here's everything that happens in each book, and just as long as you remember like the basis, like the main like structure, that's the important part. And
Mm-hmm.
try and put in these details, but if they don't fit, then that's fine.
Yeah. Yes. And I've heard this a lot from authors. I don't know if this is true or not for you, but have there been any times when your characters have decided to do something that you didn't originally plan, but you just kind of
Yep,
had to go with?
yep. they they do it all the time. Like the characters talk to me and tell me what they want, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not in line with what I had planned.
Hmm.
I was doing another panel for another convention, and because all the girls are parts of the queer spectrum, and so for the
Hmm.
most part, their costumes are the same colors except cosmic green. And they were like, "Well, she's bi. She doesn't have any bi colors." I was like, "Yeah, she didn't come out as bi until I was almost done writing the book."
Right.
And she's like, "But
Wow.
like I knew she liked a girl,"
Yeah.
and then suddenly she's like, "Actually, I'm bi," and I'm like, "Cool, your costume's already designed,
Yep.
and there's nothing bi in the costume." And she was just like, "Oh well," and I was like, "Okay, I mean, I'm just gonna go with it." But they
Hmm.
and I remember I was writing it, and I actually hadn't planned on it having like serious themes. It was just
Yeah.
gonna be like a fun, cute story.
Hmm.
And then like my nephew made a post that inspired me to add like something more serious about like harassment against women. Like he
Hmm.
made a post about his fiance. And then I got to Radical Rainbow and I was so excited. And she was like, "I don't actually want to be a magical girl." And
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh my goodness.
And she's like, I don't want to take this borrowed power." And so I was like, "Okay, well now that's going to be a new chapter I have to deal with."
Yeah.
And so that became way more serious than I meant it to be. But
Hmm.
yeah, all the authors are right. They talk to you, and like I would have plans like I really want this character to hook up with this character, and they're like, "No, not yet. Do it later."
That's awesome. That's so
I guess
cool.
it's awesome.
Well, I think it's so fascinating how it's like they're really alive in your mind, you know, in your imagination, and I think that's always really cool to hear about.
That's
So,
true.
mhm, mhm. um,
Frustrating during the writing process, but overall cool.
yeah, yes. So, how long does it take you, you know, from like conception to end product, like writing a whole novel, and like how do you stay motivated and like driven to like keep at it?
Um, I think this one took me, and the only reason why I feel like it took like a year is because I wrote it and then the editing, and I also did like a Kickstarter, and so doing all of that, I'm sure it wasn't as long as a year, but I came up with the idea in like 2016, and I ended up doing a Kickstarter that didn't fund. And so I like regrouped and did a second one that did fund. So it ended up being like over a year because of everything that was happening with it. But overall, what writing wise, I remember during like National Novel Writing Month, I
Yeah.
just like the month after, because I've never actually beaten Nano. but
Me
like
neither. I don't
the
think
month after,
it's hard.
but the month after, like in December, there was like a week where I did like 25,000 words just because it just hit me
Wow.
and I just kept writing. And I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah, we should could have done this in November," but it was
Yeah.
December, so it was fine. So it varies. Like this project was probably the biggest one I've done because there's also art and stuff. So I was working with other people. So I was working with their schedules plus my schedule, plus we do conventions and stuff. So, but I guess when I think about it, the whole like writing, like at least the first draft, maybe took like a couple of months because I was writing in between other things I had to do. So that made it take a little bit longer, which is why I'm excited about like an agent because the agent does all the things that I would normally do. So I actually can like sit and write and not do anything else. So that'll be really interesting. So, and I really wanted to write the story. So like the motivation hit, and when it hit, it was just I just couldn't stop writing. But there's other times where like there is no motivation and I just stare at the Google Doc and I would feel really bad because nothing was happening. And I remember doing a panel with some other writers and someone asked the same question and they were like, how do I not like just waste all my time on Netflix? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the authors was actually like, maybe you actually need that time to be on Netflix to clear your head so you
Yeah.
can come back to it later. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. Like maybe you actually like when this whole thing hit with like, the pandemic and stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
think it took me like God, like a couple of months to actually feel like work like promoting the second book because the second book came out in January of this year and
Yeah.
we ordered a bunch of copies to bring to conventions to sell and we had like at least 10 conventions scheduled for like the spring and the summer and we just like had a whole plan and then
Right.
everything happened and just like all the motivation was gone.
Oh
Like I
no.
didn't even want to look at the book. I was like, put the boxes in the office. I don't want to think about it. And suddenly I think like June happened. And I think that's when conventions started doing more online stuff and
Yes.
trying to come up with other ways to like deal with what was happening. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I was like, I'm gonna try and like get this book out there. And I actually ended up emailing like the agent because we had been talking before and then everything crashed. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just kind of like got real quiet. But
Yeah.
I like sent an email and I was like, hey, if you're still interested, I'm sorry I haven't been emailing or anything. And they were like, we understand. Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We get it. And
You're
so
right.
suddenly it was like, I think I needed that 2 months of, was it 2 months? 3 months of just sitting at home playing Animal Crossing and not thinking about what was happening. And suddenly everything just like, I don't know. I like woke up one morning and I was like, I'm motivated again. It came back. And I think it was like a combination of so much time had passed. And then people around me were starting to like, you know, kind of like get out of that haze too. And I would watch them and I was like, I think I kind of want to try to do the same thing. And we took like very small steps. Like, did you at least like send that email today? Okay, good. That's good that you did that today. And then just build up to like, did you actually write this pitch today? And until we got to like a higher level of that. So
Yeah. I agree. It's kind of like what you said, like a haze. And I think most people were definitely feeling that at some point, and everyone's in a different place. So some might still be feeling that, and that's okay. Just like, one step at a time.
and I think I read a tweet that was like, what was it like dealing with depression was like you're going through that state and you don't want to do anything, but then you feel bad because you're not doing anything. So you beat yourself up because you're not doing anything, but you can't do anything because you're dealing with your depression. And it's like,
Yes.
yes, that was the cycle I
That
was in.
yes, it's that cycle. Absolutely. Yeah, and just yeah, learning to it's slow process like, starting to get out of that, and highs and lows. It's not always going to
Mhm.
be super productive, but like
Yeah. And just learning that that everyone is in a different spot. Like, I
Yes.
think a lot of times people look at other people in the same industry and they're like, God, why aren't I there yet? Why am I not at
Mm.
that point? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, because it takes time. And if you
Yeah.
actually pay attention to that person, you'll see that they too took like, that 2 to 3 month hiatus, and they too struggled, and they too are going through like the same thing. And it's like, I know it feels like there's a bunch of people who are like, yes, all of this stuff is happening. And it's like, yeah, but if you look at their feed before that point, it's the same, like, I'm struggling, this is hard, I don't know what to do. So it's like you have to stop looking at other people and assuming that you're not making progress. It's like we're all moving at our own pace. And as long as you're still moving, or at least still attempting to move forward, then that's progress.
Absolutely. It's that that constant it's easier said than done, but like not comparing yourself to others, like compare
Yes,
yourself to who you were yesterday. Like, you know, take the steps you need to today that were a little bit better than yourself yesterday, and then you'll get there. Definitely.
exactly. We actually, and this is kind of like a silly analogy, but my wife and I play Beat Saber, and when we started playing it again, because they came out with like the Linkin Park soundtrack, and so we had to buy it immediately.
Nice.
And
Yes.
so we have all of our scores from before the quarantine happened. So now when we beat a song, we put like a little cue by our name to show that that's like that was you during quarantine. It's not it's not as high of a score as, your score back in January, but it's at least showing that you played this and you did this during this time. And so now we have like, free quarantine Beat Saber scores and current quarantine Beat Saber scores. And occasionally they actually beat the scores that we had before. And they're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
nice. That's delightful. But she like put a Q by her name. And I was like, why is there a Q? And she's like, because that's my quarantine score, which is going to be lower than the score when,
Hmm.
we were playing, regularly. And because there's a lot of moving in the game and a lot of like, it's like a workout basically.
Yeah,
And
I imagine.
so, so she's like, this was me before everything happened, which was at like a much better state of mind. And this
Hmm.
is me now, which is at least on the board. It's not, as high as it was before, but I can work up to it. And so every
Right.
time we play, it's like slowly inching up to like being able to play Expert Plus again.
Yes.
and, and someday, we did it like a couple times, and we're like, yes, see, we're actually getting back to the point where we were okay. So that was kind of like a nice idea she had. So
Oh, I love that. I love, you're working back up, and it's like keeping track of that and knowing like, yeah, there are external factors sometimes that affect, where we're at in all sorts of ways. So
yeah.
acknowledging that is really important, I think. So you mentioned that you like to use other characters as kind of stock characters for placements of your characters. And you also mentioned with Magnifique Noir, like that's kind of inspired by Sailor Moon. So clearly you already have inspirations there. But what are some other inspirations just in general for your work, whether that be like other shows or other authors that inspire you when you're writing?
Um, I'd say like my wife, my mom. My mom's a huge like inspiration because she's always like the biggest cheerleader. Sorry,
Yes.
wife, but but she's always the one that's always like, go for what you want to go for.
Hmm.
And when I was like in college and stuff and actually listening to detractors that said like writing's not a real job, she was the one who was like, eventually you'll realize that, they're wrong and that what you want to do is up to you. And
Hmm.
so it's like no matter what I do, she always ends up, on board. Like she doesn't like anime at all. And she like but she's like, you're writing this cool thing. That's great. Like I called her to tell her that I was writing for Funimation, and I had to explain who Funimation was and why it was a big deal.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And like my nephew was on the phone, so he's like, Funimation, and I'm like, yeah. See, he knows why it's a big deal. But she's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's a cool writing gig. That's awesome. And so every time I get to write another article, she's
Mhm.
like, that's great. So she's a big influence because she's always like, you should follow what you want to do because I mean, why wouldn't you follow what you want to do? Because you have to deal with it for the rest of your life. And so, and she's always like, I had to stop early because she had my brother at a young age. And so she's like, you have to go for what you want to go for. And you have to keep pushing. And you'll have days where it's hard. And so it's fine to like stop for a second, but just don't stop. So she inspires me, my wife, my nephew, friends inspire me. And just like people around me inspire me in like random ways. Like I might be outside and I might see like a cool haircut. So I'm like, I want to have a character who has that haircut or
Yeah.
something like that. And like this book series was like, I feel like it was always in the back of my head, but it took me forever to actually put it to paper. But I feel like it was always there, and just like I was seeing other people doing cool things, and I was just kind of like, why can't I do cool things too? And I just remember talking about like this book series with like in other panels and stuff, and all the questions I asked myself before I even like released it, and it was just like all these really kind of sad, depressing questions. Like, can I have an entire cast of black girls? Like, can I do that?
Yeah.
Can they all be queer? And like being nervous about it because I know how people react to things like that. And it's like, okay, the fact that I'm even asking needs to like tells me that this has to be out there because there needs to be
Yes.
more work to show people that yes, you can tell these stories. Like yes,
Yes.
you can absolutely have an entire cast that looks like you. You can have like, a cast that represents who you are. You can and I told someone else, it's like, I wish I would have had stuff like this when I was coming out. Because when I came out, I was 18. It was 2001. So I had like nobody to look toward,
Mm.
like no examples I could even remotely think of that were black.
Hmm.
And I'm like, God, what if I would have had like just one, at least one positive story, but like characters who looked like me who were also queer. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how that kind of inspired me to like, yes, make them all black, yes, make them all queer, and do it unapologetically. Just do it and have them be fun and, lovable characters who, like, yes, there's serious stuff, but also one's a nerd, one likes bath bombs, one gets like silly girl crushes and stuff like that. So that also inspired me a lot. And just, I remember I really gravitated toward anime and even like comic books and stuff because I always felt like there was always a message in those stories, but they also just so happen to be superheroes. So it's like
Yes.
there's a really important message, like when you like, messages of like friendship and like accepting who you are and like loving yourself, but also they have superpowers and can throw fire and like water. And Sailor Moon is like, no matter how much she like gets scared, she still pushes through anyway, but she's still able to like be this teenage girl who gets crushes on boys and who eats cake. And
Yeah.
like I remember I really got into that series because it was a team of girls who were cool and awesome, but also like liked makeup and liked dresses and liked all the things that people say that, oh yuck, that's girly. And it's like, but they like all those things and they also save the world.
Yes.
So I thought that was really cool. And I'm like, I kind of want a story like that. I kind of want to do that too. Like yes, like they're saving the world, but like Mariana loves wearing heels, so she's wearing heels all the time.
Hmm.
And Bree likes video games, so she's referencing, you know, video games all the time because that's what she does. And so I kind of wanted to have that same type of story like with this one. And So the second one is like even more like even more moments like that with the girls, and I wanted to have a story with like girl camaraderie. So, and also a story that shows that like, you know, black girls are tired, like they're allowed to be tired, and
Mm-hmm.
the importance of getting rest and like resting mentally. Like there's like one book, like the first book ends with a giant monster fight. So in the second book it's like, God, we're tired. like we almost died. That's bad. Like we should
Yeah.
take a second to like lay down
Yeah.
and
Need a breather.
just lay here for a minute. And like I remember getting the art from the artist for that, and I was like, I just want them laying in bed. That's it. They're just laying in bed.
Oh, that's perfect. Uh, yeah, that's beautiful, Brianna. Like, yeah, we need characters that, yeah, are powerful and strong. And also, yeah, they can wear the makeup and wear heels. And it's just like people are more complex than just
Yeah,
you are a
exactly.
superhero or you are a girly girl. You can be both. And I think
Mhm.
that's really great that you're able to also just like bring that representation kind of like to your past self. Like this is what you needed, and now you can provide that for
Uh-huh.
others. That's
I
beautiful.
always tell people, it was like I went through that phase of like being, I don't like makeup and I don't like dresses. And now I'm like, I have makeup at home and I love wearing dresses. And it's like, I think it was just because people told me it wouldn't look good on me because I'm plus size. And so it's like, I just rejected all of it. Like, little did I know that, like, as an adult, I would be into all of that stuff. Like,
Yes.
we're playing Animal Crossing, and I'm like, I need all the pink furniture. I just need all of it. like, like if you ever have anything pink on your island, please let me come by it. Like, I need the pink gumball machine. I need the pink fridge. I need everything pink. And I'm like, yeah, but the me of like 20 years ago was so like, I'm so not that person. And it's like, well, that's because people convinced you that I was bad, and it's not. It's
No.
if that's who you are, that's who you are. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we discover and reveal more things about ourselves as we grow older and we learn more
exactly.
about ourselves too, which is so wonderful. So, you mentioned too that you also write articles for like Funimation. How is writing for that, writing articles like that different than like, writing your creative stories? And like, how did you get into that?
It's only different in like the sense of like there's deadlines and like
Yeah.
there's like a general topic to talk about depending on what the assignment is. But for the most part, it still gets to be in my own voice. So it's not, it doesn't feel as different. It's just like, now there's a word count limit, but it's still me writing in my style. So it's still kind of like, fun and hopefully witty.
Yes. Well, at least the ones I found, I would definitely agree. Yes, you have the wit,
I'm
very
good.
engaging. I loved it. Yes.
And just I remember I got into it because, and I tell people because they've asked like, how do you get to do like the right for the really like cool places, and it's like I just check their Twitter. I
Yeah.
just check social media, and sometimes their editors will post looking for people to write articles, and you just go and look and see what they say. And because I think the first article I wrote was about Endeavor from My Hero Academia. And
Mm.
one of the comments was like, "Oh my gosh, how did you get into this?" And I was like, "They posted that they were looking for writers." So I like, just follow the places you want to write for, or like there's a couple of different writing like Twitters that are dedicated to posting jobs that are open. So it's like just follow them and give it a shot and see what
Right.
they say. Have some samples on hand, and
Hmm.
it's like I get to talk about nerd stuff, and sometimes it's basic like top 5 anime to watch for the fall, and other times it's like deep dives into characters and whatnot. Like I wrote about Endeavor, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
and, and like the editor was like, you know, a lot of people don't like him. I'm like, I know, that's why I want to write about him.
Yes, that's awesome.
I'm into like the characters who you're like, God, you're such a jerk, but you're so interesting.
So interesting. And like the end of the last season, it's like, see, there's more there.
Yes, yes, it is like that's I love writing like that where it's like
Mhm.
it seems like they're just like a one-dimensional like jerk, and then you
Uh-huh.
delve more into it and you're like, huh, okay. Actually, and like the editor was like, I mean, just in case if people give you grief for this article, I'm like, I've written other articles before that have caused more grief, so this is fine. I've written about like racism in the cosplay community.
Mhm.
This will be okay.
Right.
And I like writing articles like that where it's like, you know, here's this media or this person or this topic and just like a deeper look, at least from my perspective. And I said, I think I said it in the Convergence panel. I don't remember. I know I've tweeted about it, but I'm always like, media is so important because that's usually our first window into the world. Because it's like, before I even went to school, before I even made friends, you know, my parents were reading to me or like we were watching something on TV. So it's like, that's why it's so important. Like, that's why the stories that are out there are important because what are we like partaking in? What are we engaging with? And what message is it sending? So I'm always interested to write about like, you know, here's this character or here's this series and here's this like deeper look at like what this could have meant or possibly did mean. It's not like the creator actually flat out tells you all the time. So
Mhm.
it's like
Right.
my point of view. Like I wrote an article a couple years ago about like Bakugo and mental health, and I was like, I love this
Yeah.
article so much because so many people were like, he's such a jerk, and I'm like, no, it means more than that. Here's
Yeah.
why.
Oh, yes. Please defend Bakugo. Please. We need that.
I love Bakugo so much, and I'm like, he's so interesting to me, and
Yeah.
just that like this is a kid who grew up being told he was perfect, and here's the results, and also no one's really checked him on it ever. So,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like, and like I wrote the article and I was like, I looked back at the series and was just like, I just realized that no one actually ever asked if he's okay, even if he like goes through these terrible arcs. Like, hey, you just
Yeah.
got kidnapped by an entire league of villains.
Right?
And no one's like, you think he's okay? They're just like, oh no, we'll just send him home. It's like, what?
Right. Yes, and he might like outwardly pretend to be okay, but
Yeah,
he's got some stuff going on inside.
I was talking about like the second episode and the sludge villain and how
Yes.
everyone went to check on Deku, and then they were like, "Man, Bakugo, you're so strong. You should be my sidekick." And I'm like, "He was held hostage. This is not the time. Please ask if he's okay." And no one did. And I'm like, that just
Yes.
adds to the character. And I'm like, the only thing I'm sad about is that article was only up to the third season. Because it's like,
Mhm.
if we go to season 4, there's even more development. But at the
Yes.
time, there
Uh-huh.
was no season 4 when I wrote it. And then season 4 happened, and I was like, oh my God,
Yes. Oh my
I'm
goodness. Season
boring.
4. Absolutely. How much emphasis do you put on like the movies? Like, do you take the movies as more
Oh,
canon or not?
I, oh, that's hard because the movies are always like outside of the series.
Yeah.
But also, there's like the last movie is so
Uh-huh.
good.
That's why I asked, because like Bakugo goes through a lot in that movie.
So good. That was there was a tweet that was like, "What was the last movie you saw before the quarantine?" And I was like, "My Hero Academia." We
Yep.
went to the movies and we saw it. And that was the last movie we saw before quarantine, and like we saw it with a friend, and I looked over and she cried.
Oh my gosh.
And, and I felt so bad reason the quarantine happened, so half the fandom couldn't see the movie.
I know. Yes. I was so happy
And
I
it
could
was
see
like
it right away.
so good. And I'm like, the minute it comes out on like Blu-ray, I'm just gonna be like, Funimation, can I please write a whole article about the movie?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'll be the first to read that.
And I know it technically is like, it's technically not canon, but also it's got canon elements. So
Yes.
it's just like, it's hard. It's like I kind of can't. Well, no, you can take it into account, but they're all like kind of like fun alternate universes, but also
Yeah.
has plot threads from like the manga because I'm caught up in the manga.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, there's manga stuff too that
Yes.
isn't in the anime yet,
Right.
which makes it harder because I remember someone shared the Bakugo article and they were like, you didn't mention the stuff in season 4. And I was like, well, there was no season 4 when I wrote it. And they were like, oh. And I'm like, yeah. And I can't talk about the manga because I'm only talking about the anime because Funimation doesn't have the manga. So I can't talk about the manga.
Right. You got to focus on the anime.
And that's hard because the manga is further and there's so much happening.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. It's so hard. And I don't read manga for everything. I don't read a lot of it really. But when I do, it's so hard to be in that place of not everyone knows what's happening in the manga, but you want to discuss. Yeah, that's hard.
It is hard. And it's like, because I know there's Attack on Titan spoilers right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've stopped watching it, but friends are still into it. So like they're like, God, if you don't read the manga, you don't know that this happened. And I'm like, well, a lot of people don't, or they're still behind, or they're not reading it off like an app. They're reading it from like the actual books at the bookstore. And
Yes.
so it's hard to keep up with everything. It's fun because like I grew up in the time where there was like not much anime.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that there's like they released the 2 OVA episodes for My Hero Academia and it just showed up instantly. And I'm like, God, when I grew up, like back in the 90s, I would not have seen this for like 5 years.
Oh my goodness, yes. We're spoiled now.
Funimation, they were trying to do like a live viewing, and I remember the program they used didn't work. So like 2 minutes later, they were like, "Okay, we put it over there. You can watch it now." And I was like, "That only took 2 minutes." And my Dragon Ball Z days, I waited like years to get the next episode because like a new studio got it,
Right. Yes.
for them to dub it. And I'm like, there is no Crunchyroll, there is no Netflix, there is no Hulu. What am I going to do?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So it's amazing. There's so much of it now, and like people are like, "What are you watching now?" And I'm like, I don't even know anymore because there's so much to keep up with, and I'm always behind. And I'm like, oh, I think I'll get caught up on Demon Slayer, and they're like, Demon Slayer, the movie's coming out soon, and I'm like, the movie? What?
Right. There's just constantly so much anime available that it's impossible to keep up with all of it. And I definitely feel spoiled. I didn't really get into anime until like 2012, 2013. So right when streaming services were kind of ramping up. And so I never had to deal with those Dragon Ball Z and craziness.
Oh my goodness. and the editing that happened with anime in the 90s, like the Sailor Moon cousins and all the other things that got edited, and then finding out like years later, like, hey, they weren't actually cousins, they were actually together. Like, yes.
It's like, yeah, I am complete advocate for just stop changing things when you bring it over here. Like, we want
show me the way that it was in Japan. And it's just and watching it back in the 90s, I didn't realize what was edited, and then I walked into a Suncoast back when Suncoast was still a thing. And I was like 16, and the guy working was just like, let me tell you what you've been missing this whole time.
Yes, that's great.
I was like, what? Wait, what? And they're like, yeah, but it's not on TV. You have to buy the VHS tape for $30 to $40, and it's only like 2 episodes. And I'm like, oh. And I did. I still have some DVC VHS tapes because they were so expensive.
Yes.
And now you can get like a whole box set for the same price or a Crunchyroll subscription. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm so happy with it though. I'm so happy with like instant access to anime. The fact that like in the middle of quarantine, they're still releasing anime.
Yes.
Like still.
Like,
and I'm like, no.
Yes, like Fruits Basket has been my savior all quarantine.
I'm like seeing posts and they're like, oh yeah, all the dub actors figured out a way to record from home, so we're gonna put all of their voices together for this episode. And I'm like, what?
Oh yes.
Like, no, anime's still continuing, guys. There was like a little hiatus, but it's coming back. And I'm like, wow.
Yes. Oh, it's so great. So good. So obviously we've talked a lot about different animes, different shows. But since this is an animation podcast, I have to ask the question, if you can, because I know it's an impossible question to ask, what is your favorite piece of animated media?
Oh my, favorite?
Or a top 5.
Okay, top 5 might be a little bit easier.
Okay, I know it's a lot. It encompasses a lot.
Oh my goodness. And they might all be for like silly random reasons. But
that's
like,
fine.
Okay, so God, that's a hard question.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Take your time thinking about it. And I almost like it better if it's for a personal reason, because I love how these, whether it be a movie or an anime or, video game, like these stories can hit us at different times and hit different people differently. True. And for some people, it might be like, that was not super great. But for other people, it's like, no, this like saved me and was like the best thing, and I needed it for this reason,
So I know one right off the bat is Batman the Animated Series.
Nice, yes.
Is like, I rewatch episodes and they're like better than I remember. And it's just, and it's like, oh my God, it was such a good animated show. And I remember really liking it because it was still geared towards kids, but it wasn't like toned down because kids were watching.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, if it's geared toward like a certain audience, they'll like tone it down when they don't have to, or if it's like geared towards adults, they'll try and make it too edgy. And it was like this sweet spot where it satisfied everybody. And like Mask of the Phantasm was like me and my mom's favorite like animated movie. Like I remember I mentioned it to her, like, because she's like, who's your favorite Batman? And I'm like, Kevin Conroy. And she's like, who do you like the animated Batman? And she's like, oh my God, that's right. And I'm like, yeah, that's my favorite one. It's Kevin Conroy. That's how I really, really got into Batman, was the animated series. And like, and all the like villains and stuff I loved, and just that's still like my favorite piece of animation is that series. I have the box set, and occasionally we'll pop in a DVD and we're like, God, it's still good. Like, it's still like really good.
Yeah.
And like a more recent one, I really liked the Harley cartoon, like the Harley Quinn series.
Oh yeah, I haven't taken a look at it.
It feels a lot like the same like fun as the animated series from back in the day, except obviously it's more adult because it's Harley, so there's like blood and stuff. But like that same like humor and heart felt like it was still there, and it's got really great queer representation, like really good, because Harley and Ivy. And it was like, I remember really liking it because there's like moments where, Ivy hesitates about being with Harley, and it isn't because, oh my God, I can't like a girl. It's because Ivy, or Harley, you're unstable. So, I don't know if I can actually like give my heart to you because you're unstable and
Mhm.
not like. But I just remember really liking, the writing's great, the acting's great, and
Mhm.
everything's fun. So that's another one I really like. I loved Spider Verse a
Oh my
lot.
goodness, yes.
Oh
Yes.
my god, Spider
Yes.
Verse was so good, and
Oh,
just
amazing.
I remember like the scene where he jumps off the roof, and
Yes.
I'm like, God, it's so good.
Gave me goosebumps.
And just like I really remember liking that Peter B
Mhm.
was allowed to be like this really dysfunctional adult character
Right.
because like and it's like in a lot of like animation, adults are seen as like level-headed and put
Mhm.
together, and this was like, no man, like I spent years being Spider-Man, my life is ruined, I'm tired, like I
Yeah.
just want to like hang back and not do this anymore. And I Spider Verse is like one of those where like it's one that's like in the collection, but also I will hit the play button on Netflix because
It's
it's just
yes,
so good, and that's like another great one.
for sure.
Thinking, I feel like the next one is so silly, but I really like Rocky and Bullwinkle because that was me and my brother's cartoon that we
Oh, that's
watched.
so sweet. That's awesome.
And like he was my like Saturday morning cartoon guy.
Yeah.
Like, and so we would watch like Rocky and Bullwinkle. We would watch like
Hmm.
Bugs Bunny cartoons and stuff,
Oh yeah.
and he would do impressions of the characters. So it's like, even if like I haven't watched it in ever since he was like alive, so it's been like many many years. But like recently, there was like a Geico commercial, I think, that used Rocky and Bullwinkle or something, and I was like, oh my god!
Yes.
So I that just has one of those like special place in my heart cartoons.
Absolutely. Like lots of
Is
good
that one?
memories.
It's like I don't even know if it holds up. It probably doesn't. I don't actually care. Like I just
Right.
um God, what else? Like if I start listing anime, we'll be here all day. But I already said like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, and
Yes.
like I know those are like the cliche answers, but those are like, baby's first anime
Right.
series.
Right.
So oh, more like baby's first anime series that she can tell her parents about, because
Mhm.
like a lot of the anime that was on was like late night
Mhm.
sci-fi channel adult oriented cartoons, because back in the day they advertised anime as like the hardcore
Right.
epic cartoon, and like I found the commercial that sci-fi used to have from like the 90s, and it
Mhm.
was like, this isn't for children, make sure the kids are in bed, and I'm like, oh god, no wonder why my parents thought anime was such a bad idea.
Right. Right. Because, like, we have in the US this, like, very cornered view of animation being just like
Yeah,
Disney animation. And then anime, it's like, yeah, there is like adult animation, but there's anime for literally anybody. There's
exactly.
so
And
many.
just like in the 90s they advertised it as like the hardcore thing, and all this stuff was like hardcore, bloody, sexual
Hmm.
anime that like I was 10. I was 10 years old. So it's like I can't tell my parents about this, but then like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, I'm like, okay, you know what? They'll be on board with this. And I
Hmm.
really like those series, and I didn't have to like defend it because it was like on at 2 o'clock in the morning. So
Right.
but, like, those two definitely like skyrocketed the love. Like
Hmm.
before it was like, Wicked City was interesting because it was different and extremely raunchy. And so, but like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon was like, oh, there's actually like a series with a bunch of characters with backstories and plots, and there's stakes, and like,
Hmm.
and so it was like when I would talk about anime, it's like, well, I mean, there's an entire series that's been going on for like years and years, and it's got like a whole like universe of like, knowledge and stuff like that. And so
Hmm.
those are like the two that was like, and I know those are the ones you say people are like, oh god, it's like no, but it's true. Like in the '90s, those were the two that we had that was like, see, mom, it's actually a legit thing that you don't have to be scared that I'm watching.
Oh, right. And they're common answers because they are good. Like,
yeah, they're good, and like there's a reason why like even if Sailor Moon wasn't the first Magic Girl series, it's the one everyone references. And
absolutely.
And so it's like those two just like hold that like anime place of like, here's how it started. And like, you know, the someday you'll grow out of it and then never growing out of it, like ever, and never will.
Right.
But like those series, but like the ones I love the most are like, I really love Gankutsu. I really love X, like the Clamp series, X 1999. And I really love Revolutionary Girl Utena. Those are like my top 3 anime series, like of all time. But like I also love like My Hero Academia is that one surprised me. Like I didn't think I was gonna fall into that rabbit hole as deeply as I did. and I was late. Like I didn't start watching until season 3.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I was like, we were at a con and we were guests at this con in 2018, and Yaya Han was also a guest. So we were all at the guest dinner, and everyone was talking about My Hero Academia because the new episode was airing on Saturday. And so she was like, we're going to hook up my laptop and we're going to watch My Hero Academia. And so it was like in the middle of the arc where Bakugo gets kidnapped. So I didn't really know what was going on, but it was still like really engaging. I'm like, what's happening in this forest? Oh my god. And before the con was over, she came to my table and she was like, you have to watch the series now. Like you have to go home and watch it. And I was like, okay, I will. And I watched, all it took was 2 episodes, and then I stopped watching and I got my wife and I was like, you have to watch this with me now.
Yes.
And now it's like, it's my current favorite anime series. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
I really, really enjoy it, but I also really enjoy Demon Slayer. Also snuck up on me. Like I didn't think I'd get so attached to Tanjiro, but
yes, absolutely. And Inosuke.
I worry about him all the time.
Yes, these poor kids.
I think I need to write an essay that's just called These Poor Kids.
Yes, you do. Oh man. Oh, they all just need a big hug.
I think I wrote in like the Bakugo articles, like I've gone from, you know, relating to Deku and being like, I'm the like optimistic, you could do it no matter what character. Now I'm like retired All Might who's like, please children, take care of yourselves. I worry about all of you so much. Like everything is stressful. I'm like, can they just have a normal day one time in their lives? And the answer is no. They can't. Like nothing ever goes as planned ever. Like
never.
Like they couldn't even go have a school festival without something happening.
Right.
I'm like, all Deku wanted to do was go get something from the grocery store. Why can't he just get groceries?
I'm so glad you give your characters a little break every now and then.
Oh my god. And just looking back at a lot of series and how there's no breaks. Nobody gets a break. Like everybody's like stressed all the time. Like I'm really into like Black Butler as well. And like every arc is just like it's just like heartbreak to arc, like all the time, constantly, without fail. And I'm just like, Ciel is just trying to like avenge his family. He's like, wow, doesn't matter. These poor kids. Yeah, I might have to pitch that. These poor kids. Poor kids. I feel like that would be the longest article ever. Just like in the history of like ever, and like. What was it? We were watching Utena, and just like the realization, there's like a scene where one of the characters says that like they're like, "Oh, you can drive my car," and he's like, "I'm not old enough to drive yet," and I'm like, "You're not?"
Characters' ages can be so ambiguous sometimes.
I know, and it's like you've gone through 3 seasons of misery and you're not even 16. Just, oh gosh, I feel like this whole podcast is just me being like, protect the children, please. Protect all of them. I know that's not what's going to happen. They're all going to.
Oh, no.
It's because since I like My Hero Academia so much, and I love Deku, but I'm like, oh my god, I feel like this is the wrong character to like, because he's just going to stress me out every season. It's going to be new stress all the time.
Yes.
But like, I need to like a different character who's not stressful.
Right. Someone I don't have to worry about as much.
Which is like Bakugo's also stressful, but not to the point where Deku is.
Yes.
I'm like, Deku, don't use your arms anymore. And he's like, cool, I'll just break my legs instead.
Right, like, kid, you're hurting yourself too much.
That's not what they meant. They meant it all. Like, he was fighting Overhaul. I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna die.
That was just too much.
I was like, oh god, and like, oh, I could just keep regenerating forever. And I'm like, oh yes, but please don't. Like, we're like, okay, never mind. We're down this path now. This is where we are.
Yeah. I love it. Oh yes. Well, we'll just got to keep an eye on Deku. See how that goes. Oh dear. Oh, so thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. This was an absolute blast.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Oh my goodness. This was so fun. Just geeking out about like animation and stuff. That was so fun.
Thank you.
Can I say one that's like not actually a cartoon, but I love it?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Cool. So the Persona series, I love like. And the animation style in like the last game is so cool.
Yes.
Like it's just slick and like kind of jazzy, and I love that series so much. And we finally got a Switch like a year or two ago, so I started playing Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
And like
yes. I'm a huge Zelda fan. Yes.
Oh my god. And I'm like 500 hours later, it's just like it's just like the animation is so beautiful, and like the story was great, and just like I couldn't believe, because I've played Zelda for so many years and I'm so used to it being like structured.
Yeah.
But like you have to go to this point and this point and this point.
Exactly.
And I like couldn't believe when I got through it, like the plateau, and like glided down and landed. The game was just like, go. Really?
It's just like anywhere.
I can just go anywhere I want, and they're like, yeah, you can actually go fight Ganon now if you want to. You don't want to.
You don't
but
want
could.
to.
And it's so, when they announced the second one,
oh my gosh,
like I forget which E3 it was, but I was just like, yes, please, yes now, yes.
Yes, I'm so excited for the sequel. It's gonna be amazing. I mean, it could even be bad, and I would still like it at this point. Like,
I remember I played Persona 5, and I remember I was like, oh, it didn't get Game of the Year because Zelda came out the same year, so Zelda got Game of the Year.
Yeah.
So I played Zelda the next year because that's when I got the Switch, and I was like, oh, I understand. Yes. I get it. This is fantastic. I want a prequel where I get to play with the champions. Like,
I know. Yeah.
Like they're like, here's Urbosa, and I'm like, can I just get a game where I can play with these four? Like,
yes.
And just please. And they had the DLC that was like some of the backstory, and I'm just like, I want a whole game where I get to go meet Urbosa for the first time, and I get to go to the Zora domain, and just
that would be so cool.
Like, I was actually sad when I beat the game, and I was like, well, already I beat it, but fortunately there's still 500 things to do. But I want more of this universe, and
yes, exactly.
I'm so glad that the sequel looks like it's in the same universe and
Yeah.
not like a whole different Zelda game.
Yes.
So I am stoked. So
Mhm.
Persona and Zelda and Animal Crossing, because
Of course, yes.
Animal Crossing has been the saving grace for my 2020. And
Yes.
Animal Crossing is not actually my type of game, but everybody else was playing it, so I got a copy and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Exactly. It's
I
just
understand.
peaceful. Mhm.
This is like calming and peaceful, and the worst thing that happens is you get stung by a scorpion, but then you wake up.
And then it's all okay. Yeah, no threatening danger and, Zelda monsters and Ganon threatening to, kill
we
you.
were playing the Final Fantasy remake, and like the quarantine hit so hard that I was like, I can't play this right now because it's just gonna make me upset. Because
Yes.
there's too much going on. There's too much like, and it's
Mhm.
like I know what happens, and I want to finish the game because I actually like the plot twist,
Mhm.
but I was just like, this is so heavy. Like
Yeah.
the Resident Evil 3 remake came out, and we love Resident Evil, but I was like, I can't play a game right now where
Mhm.
it's about an evil corporation and zombies, and I can't. It's too heavy.
Too much,
So
yeah.
Animal Crossing was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm at too. There are some shows too where I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna save that for another time. I'm in a different mental
Yeah,
health
there's
place.
yeah, I need like happy things. Like,
Mhm.
which I don't know why we marathon Hannibal, but we
Right,
did.
yeah, that's
And
an unusual choice.
that's not at all happy. That's the exact opposite of happy.
Yeah.
But I was late. I was late to the party on that one because I'm always late. And we watched all 3 seasons, and I'm like, it's fascinating, but oh my god! After
Yes.
I think we would watch like 1 or 2 episodes, then we would immediately play Animal Crossing.
Yeah, you need to like cleanse your palate.
Yes. Oh god, palette.
Oh no, sorry. Oh gosh. I did not intend
No.
that. Oh dear.
Oh man. So that's what. Well, mostly playing Animal Crossing, but those are
Hmm.
games, and like I usually love fighting games too. So I have the My Hero Academia fighting game. I just have to play it more,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I haven't played
because
that. Do you like it?
I really like it. I got the second one, and I know Hawks is DLC now, so
Oh,
I know.
yeah. Gotta get on that.
Hawks, I love Hawks so much, and it's like
Yes.
I remember like he only had like 6 seconds of clip, and the internet went nuts. I'm like, Hawks is awesome, guys. Like I don't know what to tell you. He's amazing. Like,
For
and
sure.
they're like, but he hasn't done anything yet. I'm like, I know, but he will.
It's coming.
Like he's in the movie, he basically flies around and it's cool. But
Uh-huh.
that's it. That's cool though. He's awesome. I love him. So
Yes, yes.
he's DLC now, so I have to download him so I can play with him. And
Hmm.
but I enjoy the game a lot. I just have to play it more because we got it before Animal Crossing, and now everything is Animal Crossing until.
Absolutely. So, thank you again. And before we go, could you let our listeners know where they can find your book and your other things on social media or wherever?
Yeah. So I'm mostly on Twitter, which is at Breachibi Tweets. And then our store is snowtigra.etsy.com. That's what we've been updating the most. So that would be the best place to get the book. Otherwise, the store link is on my Twitter. I have a Facebook and stuff, but I barely touch it. So
Hmm.
Twitter is the best place to find me. It's a very random place to go. Like it ranges from like
Yes.
it ranges from like fandom to like social justice, then back to fandom, and then some book stuff. So
Yeah.
if
Yep.
you're into that, that's totally where you can find me. And I mean, this week it'll be Sappy Post because our wedding anniversary is in a couple days.
Oh,
So
congrats. Happy anniversary.
it'll be
Wow.
like the required like we got married a year ago and we had plans, but now we're
Aw.
just kind of, well, we are going somewhere, but like indoors, obviously.
Yes.
So nothing like extravagant or anything like that. So
even a little vacation, a little getaway is always nice.
yeah, we usually do like getaway translates to hotel, which is you have to wear your mask and it's highly sanitized, and then we just order delivery because that works for us.
I mean, that sounds like, the best weekend anyway, like just hanging out, right? And just being
and
somewhere
not
else.
working. We're not allowed to work while we're on our little vacation, so
exactly.
No work allowed.
Well, congrats, and I hope that's fun for you guys.
Thank you.
So thanks again for being on the podcast. This was so great. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. Remember that you can get an exclusive new Fanimated sticker and vote for upcoming episode topics by going to patreon.com/Fanimated. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Fanimated Podcast to stay up to date with all things animated, and don't forget to leave a rating and review telling us what you'd like us to watch next. The music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and the art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. That's KANDERDRAW. Thank you so much to Brianna for joining me today, and be sure to follow her on Twitter at BriChibiTweets to keep up with all of her creative endeavors. Again, that's BRICHIBI Tweets. I'll talk to you all next week, and as always, stay tuned and stay animated.
I remember because I introduced my wife to Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, and like I remember watching the Cell Saga, and like Goku was like training Gohan to fight Cell, and he's like a 10-year-old kid, and Piccolo's like he's 10. And they're like, why isn't Gohan able to fight? And he's like, he's a child.
He's a literal child.
He's a child whose father just told him to go fight like the embodiment of evil. And I'm like, Piccolo's right and he should say it. These poor kids. Like, all the time, just they can't catch any breaks.
They can't.